The title of your book, The Shallows, sounds like a pretty devastating indictment of how the Internet makes us think. Is it really all that bad?
Well, there are some good things that we all are aware of. We have access to a whole lot more information more easily than we used to, and it's easier to stay in touch with friends and family members, and we've been enjoying those benefits now for more than a decade. But I think when you look at the evidence of how the Internet is shaping our thought, you realize that we're losing something as well by being constantly connected, constantly distracted, juggling all sorts of information. And what I think we're losing are the quieter and I think deeper modes of thought, things like contemplation, reflection, introspection, the ability to read deeply and think deeply and just be attentive to one thing. So I think we're seeing a major kind of shift in the emphasis of human thought.
You spent a pretty significant amount of time in your book talking about how our brain gets rewired by different technologies. And you look first at the book and the clock and the map. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, one of the themes of the book is that what I call intellectual technologies, which are the various technologies we use to think with, have always influenced the way we think and have even influenced the neural pathways in our brains. And so the map and the clock, many millennia ago, created a more abstract thinker because suddenly, you didn't just get around by looking at your actual surroundings. You looked at this abstract picture of those surroundings. And similarly with a clock, you didn't just see time as a natural flow. It became this abstract thing, divided into seconds and minutes. The book, I think, and I spent quite a bit of time talking about the book was is kind of a unique information technology, so to speak, because it shields us from distraction. I think the great thing about the book is that there's nothing else going on when we open it up except the words. And our natural state of mind as human beings is to be distracted, is to keep shifting our focus, to watch out. Back when we were cavemen, you didn't want to get attacked or miss some source of food. So we're kind of naturally wired to keep shifting our attention. And the book trained us to pay attention. And I think it not only made a difference when we were reading, but even when we weren't reading, we suddenly had a much greater capability to filter out distractions and keep one train of thought going. The net and other related digital media, I think, has precisely the opposite of effect from the book. It actually immerses us in constant distractions and encourages us to go back to that old and I think more primitive mode of thought where you just keep shifting your attention and shifting your gaze because you have all this new information coming at you all the time.
Last week, Clay Shirky was on the show. He's a professor of digital information at NYU. And he asked the question, who is really reading all these books anyway? Let's listen.
The idea that the 19th century European novel should somehow be restored to its preeminent place that it enjoyed in the first half of the 20th century is a completely separate question and, frankly, a lost battle relative to the question of how do we maintain focus in a world where we can now opt into as many distractions as we like. And one of the things I have consistently been arguing for is that the kind of retrograde concerns for Proust and Tolstoy, which had already passed out of mainstream society, are in fact a distraction from thinking about distractions, which is the real problem before us.
Can you respond to that?
I think it's more subtle than that. I think, first of all, I think to kind of somehow dismiss Proust and Tolstoy and all great literature as something that is now part of the past, and we should be happy about that. I personally.
Well, in fairness to we only played an excerpt of this discussion, so to not just sort of jump down the distraction rabbit hole ourselves. He wasn't really arguing nobody reads Proust, nobody reads Tolstoy. He was arguing that a certain sector of society reads Proust and Tolstoy, and that there never was this halcyon time when everybody read Proust and Tolstoy.
I think that's absolutely right. As I said, I think it's more subtle than that because it's not just about the book in printed words influenced us even when we were reading, Bodis rippers and stuff. It's not just about great literature. It's about the habits of mind that were encouraged and rewarded when we sat down and read a book. And it actually didn't matter necessarily what kind of book it was, because the habits of mind are the same, and the habits of mind are ones that are attentive, that filter out distractions, that allow us to be contemplative, that allow us to make connections in our own memories. So it's not just about great literature. It's about losing, and it's not even just about reading. It's about losing these, what I think are very important modes of thought, slower, quieter, more solitary modes of thought, because now we're not just using the net once in a while. Increasingly, we're constantly bombarded. We're constantly glancing at our iPhones and our BlackBerries. We're constantly checking Facebook. We're constantly checking various web pages and Googling. There's simply, this new technology provides no opportunity, and it provides no encouragement to slow down and exercise these very different, quieter modes of thought. And when we lose those, when we begin to lose those, we begin to lose, I think, a very important part not only of our personal intellectual lives, but the very foundations of culture begin to erode, because most of culture was constructed by people who actually could pay attention to something.
And yet, I just finished reading with my 8-year-old Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which was 736 pages. This is one of the most successful book series ever, beloved by young people who grew up exactly in this age. So how do you explain that phenomenon?
First of all, I welcome it, and I wish that phenomenon happened more often. And I do think actually that younger children in particular are very flexible in their ability to shift between distracting pursuits and to immerse themselves in a very long book. It's when you start moving into the teenage years and then into the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s that people are constantly being distracted. And I think...
is there a difference here? I mean, I read long books. I read long articles. I also find myself challenged to stay with a specific task during the day. So do we have a straw dog here? Are we really talking about the ability to read long books, or are we talking about the ability to stay with a task for a long period of time?
We're talking about not just the ability to read long books, but the ability to stay with a task, the ability to follow one train of thought, the ability to hold a long conversation with someone without glancing at your BlackBerry or your iPhone. So it's this whole mode of thought. And if you look at the statistics, right now the average American is spending about 8.5 hours a day looking into a screen, cell phone, TV, computer, and on average about 20 minutes reading printed works. And that 20 minutes continues to go down. And in fact, for people in their 20s and 30s, it's 7 minutes a day reading printed works. So there's no doubt we still have a capability to sit down, many of us, and read a book, even write a book once in a while. But if you look at the general trend in society, it's ever more away from the media that encourage attention and more toward the media that encourage scatterbrained, constant shifting of attention and juggling of tasks.